Welcome, listeners, to this Speaking from Our Hearts podcast episode, where I'm joined today by Daniel Rees-Morgan from Wales. And Daniel's going to be talking to us today around his title, From Confusion to Clarity. Very warm welcome to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Paul. Much appreciated.
So, tell us about your journey so far from pain.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad for the opportunity to tell my story here and for you to extract a bit more, because I've only just recently started sharing my story publicly, and it might be a bit brief currently, and I'm sure you'll be able to extract a bit more out from me and make it a bit longer. So my story is I went through depression for 10 years to the point of feeling like I wanted to cry all day, every day, for no apparent reason. And I'm not over-exaggerating that. I was in a high state of anxiety to the point of feeling like I wanted to cry. You know, I'd wake up in the mornings in a panic attack, basically, of having to go through another day. And what was worse than being depressed and anxious was the feeling of confusion, because I didn't even know why I was depressed.
Right.
And if you know why you're depressed, at least you can do something about it. If you don't know why, where do you go from there? You know, I was lost and confused. And as if by chance, I just stumbled across some personal development books. And I didn't even buy the book that I first came across, but it just occurred to me, maybe I can do something about this, you know? I didn't want to be on medication. I didn't want that on my medical record in my depressed state. I was under the impression that if I've got antidepressants on my medical record, then future employers are not going to want to employ me. I'll never be able to get a good job, etc. So I wanted to do something about it for myself. And I think deep down, I knew that the way I felt was some kind of message that was guiding me back to a better life, you know? And so I wanted to process it for myself. And personal development did that for me, you know? I started diving into it and just started making sense of things, making sense of my own mind, and starting to feel better bit by bit. It took a long time. It wasn't like it happened overnight, you know, but every day taking steps in the right direction. And fell in love with personal development. And a long time went on of me loving personal development, being in love with it, and it being my dream to be a coach. And, you know, in my depressed state, I was like, who am I to be a coach? You know, it was years went by until finally I just realized, you know what, I've been doing this long enough now. I know what I'm talking about. I understand how things work. I've conquered depression for myself. Then why would I withhold that from, you know, me sharing it with other people? And that was the start of my coaching journey, I guess.
Okay, so I just want to pick up on something you said there, Daniel, about going back to a good life. So is it fair to assume by that statement that as a child, as a young man, you had a good life and things kind of become more confused later on for you?
Yeah. I certainly haven't had a bad life. I definitely had a long time of feeling like I needed to fit in. And I think this is where the depression started, basically. And I think that went on for a long time before I really even recognized that I was depressed. I spent a lot of time, you know, bothering with people that probably I shouldn't be, because they wasn't really my tribe, and doing things in order to try and to fit in with those people. You know, I'd be like, I'm showing off and trying to get recognition from them and not really being myself.
So what age was this, Daniel, when this was all evolving?
I think it started in school. Yeah. For a long time after that. I became depressed around about 18. And I would say in school, looking back, I can see I didn't have self-esteem all through school. It was just all about showing off and trying to be the big guy, you know, trying to gain approval in other people's eyes.
Yeah. Or have you become aware, Daniel, in later life why that was?
Self-esteem. You know, I think if anyone feels that they've got to be something other than what they really are, then there's self-esteem issue going on there, isn't there?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. But I suppose the question I was trying to sort of establish was, have you become aware then, and you're absolutely right what you've said, in my opinion, but something would have caused that self-esteem or lack of it. Was this something? I mean, mine, if I can share, mine was as a result of my upbringing and the behaviour, if we can call it that, from a stepfather. And it just stripped me of all dignity, self-esteem, self-respect, love. I just completely lost who I was and became this totally different thing, person, being, call it what you will. Because all those words are actually appropriate as I travelled through the ensuing years. So I just wondered with yourself, Daniel, was there an incident, a thing, or a mixture of things that could say, well, actually, similarly, that stripped away who I actually was?
There was nothing as extreme as abuse, but I moved around different places. I lived with my grandparents for 5 years. Because my father moved out initially. He went to go and live with my grandparents. You know, my parents split up, as you know, a lot of parents do nowadays. I stayed with my mother for a while, and then I went to go and live with my grandparents with my father still there. And it wasn't long after moving in that my father moved again. And I think that had a big impact on me.
Yeah.
And, you know, being around new kids, having to try and fit in with those kids, feeling like I had to fit in and be something different than what I was. Yeah. I think just moving around a bit and like I say, the impact of my father moving out a few times, and, you know, perhaps I internalized that in a way that it's my fault. He doesn't want to be around me, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, as the years have gone by, Daniel, from your professional role as a coach, do you find yourself having sort of gone back into the past to make sense of it? I mean, it's a bit of a kind of dual-edged question, that is, because I think we progress anyway to a place of where life's good, or as a bare minimum acceptable, okay, call it what you will. But as coaches, I'm always intrigued to sort of dig into journeys and say, well, you know, that inner work that we do on ourselves, or not, as the case may be. You know, I'm just trying to get a feel, Daniel, for how your professional journeys help you to come to terms with past challenges.
Yeah. Yeah, the sense I made of it is, like I said, while I was depressed, I had no idea why I was depressed. The sense I've made of it is that I wasn't being myself.
Yeah.
I wasn't on my path. And that depression was guiding me back to being myself, to finding my tribe, to doing something purposeful with my life, to being the best version of me that I can be. I bring it back to self-esteem. You know, I didn't, who knows where my self-esteem went off track with, you know, maybe it came from me trying to be something that I wasn't, or, you know, maybe it was the other way around, which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. But, yeah, you know, my coaching is all about self-esteem and helping people to be themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I know from my own experience and having spoken to, I've lost count of the number of people around, you know, this similar kind of, I mean, obviously every story is unique, but there's a similar kind of pattern. And as I've said before, Daniel, on a personal level, I can certainly relate to this need to use your words, fit in, to be part of. And I think it's what Robbins would probably term as the need for significance and the love and connection. Because, you know, what's interesting for me, and dare I say stereotypically guys or masculine energy, we're not actually allowed to talk about these things, are we? We're not allowed to kind of admit that we want and need love, because we're lads and we're boys and we're men, and it's like, you just get on with it. Just don't make it force. Girls are okay to talk about that kind of stuff, but we're not. And that's certainly, as a kid, the way, you know, part of one of many, many, many limiting beliefs that was bestowed upon me. So, you know, I think when I hear stories like this, Daniel, it's I think it's a stage, a process of stepping back and taking those plasters off, those labels that we've acquired along the journey that have been stuck upon us. And because, like as you say quite rightly, certainly as a child, we don't know what we don't know. We rely on people that's older than us, supposedly wiser, to guide us, to steer us, to love us. And I would never ever underestimate the power of like what you said, of like your father moving out, and that natural reaction stroke assumption of I'm not really loved. I'm not really loved, because that's one of the biggest fears we all have, isn't it? One, that we'll never be good enough, and two, we'll never be loved.
Mm.
And the two kind of go hand in hand. And I think when we acquire that situation, that way of being, Daniel, at an early age, when we haven't got that emotional or intellectual capacity to rationalize it and work it through, we kind of carry that around like a big heavy sack of coal on our backs for years.
Mm.
And I think it's because we're vulnerable and insecure, we tend to actually attract even more vulnerability and more insecurity. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it?
Yeah, trying to hide what we feel vulnerable and insecure about just perpetuates the problem, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The more we try and hide the things that we're insecure about, the more insecure we feel. So we bring it on ourselves, don't we? If we don't understand this, then we just keep making the problem worse and worse.
Yeah, we do bring it on ourselves, but I think the secret there, or the result there, Daniel, is to actually have that awareness. Because for me, it's all about awareness. Everything starts with awareness, because as you've quite rightly said, we don't know what we don't know. When you talked about your darkness, your desperation, if I'd have known what it was, I could have done something about it. But we don't know what we don't know. And so that line in the sand, I think, that we draw when things, and it's usually when things get really bad, isn't it? Then we kind of, that we draw that line, and then, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. Now, for me, it was attempted suicide. It was as drastic as 13 and a half years of age. But that actually drew a metaphoric line in the sand for me. And I had one of those fight or flight, what I now know is fight or flight. As I say, at the time I was a kid, I didn't understand any of this, but I just know that I had a purpose now. That was to fight. My term, I think it's quite patronising to use this terminology now, but at the time, and I used it for years, it was to fight for the underdog. I had a purpose. So no matter what I was going through, and I didn't understand, I understood that there was people that was going through a lot worse, or so I perceived. And that gave me a reason, a purpose to carry on. And listening to you speak, Daniel, if I'm hearing you correctly, what you said about your coaching journey actually then gave you a reason to climb over that fence that was called depression and leave it behind you. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah. And I think while I was depressed, I was still being selfish, and it was all about me getting better. And it was only after I got over depression and realized, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm really passionate about this stuff. I love personal development. I love studying how the mind works. It just makes sense to use that to help other people, But while you was talking, I just kept thinking about the Viktor Frankl story. It's a man's search for meaning. He was in the Nazi concentration camp.
Right.
And he was also a psychotherapist or psychoanalyst or something like that. And what he realized was the people that got out from there, the people that survived, was the ones that had created some meaning about their experience, that they was going to use this experience to make sure that it never happened to anyone ever again, Whereas the people who didn't have any meaning, they just felt they was going through pain for no reason, they were the ones that didn't survive.
Yeah. The power of purpose is immense. It's absolutely immense, I believe, in all our lives. And you know, from my 3 pillars of life model, Daniel, the first one is purpose, then it's prosperity, and then it's philanthropy. And in very simple terms, purpose gives us a reason to get out of bed in the morning. Prosperity then gives us a life that we enjoy, that we're happy, that we love. So we go up a level, because just purpose alone is not enough. It's a significant step forward, but it's not enough. Whereas prosperity takes us up into that happiness, that love, that, all of a sudden the lights come on in our world. And then the third one, philanthropy, is about giving back. So I've been on this journey, I've learnt these lessons, now I give it back, kind of, tying it in what you said there about Frankel. I give these lessons learned now back to people, so that they don't have to pay the big price that I paid. And I think that for me personally, Daniel, is everybody's responsibility on this planet. We're all learning different lessons. Some are massive, life-changing ones, world-changing ones. But for me, there's no rank, because I think it goes back to when Gandhi said, be the change you want to be. So I think by us making small changes, and, well, it's just one person. Is it really? Is it really? I suppose that's akin to people when they vote. Well, my vote won't make any difference. That's a good job a whole nation don't take that attitude. And it's the same principle, I feel, Daniel, with ourselves, that, we can be that change. And, obviously your story is a prime example of that. Did you follow anybody in particular on your, because I listened to the tone of your voice and the way you kind of embrace this gratitude for this journey, this opportunity, all this personal development, Daniel. Was there anybody in particular that you singled out, that resonated with you in the early steps?
Yeah, well, being in personal development, it's not very long before you come across Tony Robbins.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of his for a long time.
Yeah.
I think most people who are into personal development are a fan of Tony Robbins. Many others. I'm obsessed with personal development. So anyone that's getting any recognition, then I'll dive into their material. Nathaniel Brandon actually is one that I would like to mention, because a lot of people say they've never come across him. But his book, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, absolute masterpiece. It's one of my favorites of all time. Eckhart Tolle, I love all the spiritual side, all that. Just recently, Sid Banks, The 3 Principles. Jack Canfield, all the self-esteem type stuff, I forever with the list of names,
Do you find now, though, Daniel, that, and I hear what you say about these, these many different practitioners. My early years were formed by Dr. Stephen Covey. I was mesmerised by him.
Right.
That was way before, I'd even heard of Tony Robbins. And of course, as you quite rightly say, I kind of flirted with the Robbins thing, became a strategic intervention coach. And I rate some of his stuff very highly. But what I also learned, Daniel, the more I progress down the journey, is I'm not a Robbins or a Chopra clone. I am me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think it's like the lesson there for all of us, whether we're talking about personal development or inspired by people or whatever it is, we take a little bit of learning from that person, a little bit of person from that, learning from that experience, and it contributes to our growth, doesn't it?
There's a Bruce Lee quote which fits perfectly with what you're saying, is take what's useful, discard what's not, and add what's uniquely your own.
Yeah.
And the way I look at personal development, I love personal development, and I take all these little bits and I bring, and I just add my unique flavor to my coaching.
That's an interesting insight, Daniel, and one that, yet again, I wholeheartedly agree with. But it's a contrasting one, isn't it, from that sort of lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem state that you found yourself in previously. Was there a conscious point, can you remember, where, I suppose the phrase is, the penny dropped and you realised just how special and important you are as an individual? Or has it been a kind of just a gradual, or was there almost a eureka moment that says, hang on, I'm not in a black phase of my life anymore, I'm in a white phase, to use my previous term?
It was definitely more slow and gradual. It happened over a long time. I think, if anything, the big change moment was when I discovered personal development, and I discovered, oh, actually, maybe I can do something about this. I'm not just stuck in this place where I'm, stuck in the mud and no way of getting out of it.
Mm. How do you, Daniel, find talking about love?
How do I find talking about love?
Mm.
I think love has to come for yourself first. I
Okay.
think an important relationship in your life is your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think when you're in that place, you can be loving towards all beings, anyone you come across. And any intimate relationship that you're in then is going to be much more balanced. You're not going to have that needy side of it. You don't need that person. You're very comfortable in yourself, and you can live by yourself if that's what, if that's what needs to be. And ironically, you attract more people into your life then. People are part of your life when you're in that place. And when you know what your values are and you know what you want, you know who you are, the right person just kind of flows into your life, don't they,
Yeah, attraction. Yeah, the right people show, or not, as the case may be, depending, as you say, what frame of energy you're in, what energy state you're in.
Yeah, yeah.
So from that, Daniel, when you talk about intimate relationships, just bear with me on this, if you will. Before we can love ourselves, and I ask it as a question, not as a suggestion, do you feel that there's a need for source? Do we need to have that insight, that connection, not a belief, but a connection, because all beliefs are false, but a connection with a higher source, whatever that might be? And that is very intimate, very personal. For some it's God, for some it's consciousness, for some it's spirituality, for some it's awareness. There is no right, there's no wrong. It's a very personal, intimate relationship. I mean, is that a view or a feeling that you share?
I think self-esteem is about allowing that energy, whatever you want to call it, allowing the universe, allowing God to shine through you, basically. Nature never repeats itself. And I think, like I said, I felt like my depression came from trying to be something that I wasn't. And I think that just takes you away from the source, doesn't it? I think truly being yourself is about being connected with that source and allowing it to shine through you in its unique way.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what I love about this conversation, Daniel. Behind you, there's a window and there's a very strong light shining on your back. And I think that's symbolic.
That's what my coaching is all about. I made a post about it recently. I just want to help people to be themselves. I want to help them to allow that light to shine. And there's nothing that I want to give them. There's nothing I don't want to build them up in any way. I just want to connect them back to that source. I love the metaphor that we're all diamonds covered in crap and then rolled in glitter. The diamond is who we really are. That's the connection to source. And the crap that's on the top is all the fears and anxieties and feeling like you have to live up to other people's expectations and all this. And then the glitter that we wrap over the top is the facade, because we get confused, because all this crap gets put on at such an early age that we get confused and we think the crap is who we really are. So we've got to put on this facade then to pretend that I'm this, I'm that, or the ego. I got to dress a certain way. I got to act a certain way. I got to drive a certain car. I got to have a certain job.
Yeah.
My job. I don't think we're ever going to completely get rid of the crap, because there's always going to be some fears. I think as part of it is about accepting that. But I want to wipe away enough that you can see the diamond and you can recognize who you really are.
Yes, and my take on that, Daniel, that context that you've just put there is, And I was in the States a few years ago when I heard this. And somebody said to this very, very, very eminent practitioner, a world famous practitioner, do we ever get to the stage where we're sorted? And he pondered for a moment and he said, what does this word sorted mean? He was playing a little bit of sort of devil's advocate. And he said, I think I know what you mean. And he said, but what do you think? And the lady that asked the question was, well, I don't know. He said, let me tell you the answer. No. So to put it in what you've just said, Daniel, challenges are always there, always, but isn't it how we handle them? And what he said was, when this lower self presents itself, this anger, this frustration, this challenge, whatever it is, learn to catch it. Allow it to come in and allow it to go out. Don't deny it, because all you're doing then, I was liking, I think it was Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul, Daniel, when he said around this, somebody coming in, a challenge coming in, and the first port of call is through your heart. But what we tend to do, because we protect ourselves, we kind of bat it away. I suppose we're in a little bit of denial. Don't want to deal with it now. Can't be doing with this. The problem is that energy will not go away. It will find somewhere to stay. So it bounces off the heart and goes up there and stays up there on free ball. Well, my take up on that is when that visitor comes, to use that example of learn to catch it, let it in. So let life happen through you, not to you. Because for me, letting life happen to you is kind of just sitting back and saying, well, why is it always me? I'm kind of in victim mode then. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense, and it's something that I speak to my clients about very often. I think where a lot of problems come from, it's like you're saying, we have these messages come through our emotions, we feel certain. And the emotion, like I said, with my depression, is just trying to guide us back to a better place, is an innate intelligence within us that is trying to give us a message. And I think the problem comes, it's not the message that's the problem, it's how we interpret it. Sometimes we feel like, oh, I feel this way, so there's something wrong with me. If I'm depressed, then there's something wrong with me, I'm broken. If I'm anxious, then the medical world would have you believe that you're deficient in some chemical, The message is not the problem, it's your relationship with the message. If we can allow ourselves to feel a certain way and to experience what's actually happening in the moment and to learn from it and allow it to guide us, then we can have a better relationship with our emotions, our unconscious mind. And that is self-love, isn't it? That's self-esteem. You can tell yourself affirmations until you're blue in the face. But if you're not in a loving relationship with your unconscious mind, it doesn't mean anything. If you're in a relationship with a person, you tell them you love them all day long, and then you go out and sleep with someone else behind their back, they don't feel loved. It's the same thing with our emotions. If you can look at the mirror in the mirror and tell yourself that you love yourself, but if you're not listening to the message that your unconscious mind is trying to give you, you're not in a loving relationship with yourself.
And the reason I mentioned the source element earlier on, Daniel, as being the most intimate relationship of all, is using this example of a mobile phone. And if this is us and we just rely on us and our own battery, sooner or later that's going to go flat. And what we have to do is plug the phone in to an external source for energy and power to get recharged, re-energized. And I think using a simple mobile phone is a great example of, say, whatever that source is, we all need it. And that's for me, as I said, a very personal, intimate relationship above all any other, because that is what sustains me. And then you say, I am in a position where I'm fully charged and energized, emotionally, spiritually, to be able to give things, because we can't give what we don't have. Because if there's no charge on the battery, well, there's no charge on the battery. Yeah. I just think that's why I always like sort of asking that question, Daniel, because it's one that well, people say, well, I'm not a religious person. Well, whatever the dynamic is, I didn't ask or I didn't suggest that people are religious, but I massively have come to know that we do need that external power through it. And that is the way life naturally is anyway. I think it's only when we're in that kind of lower state of that ego-driven, I know best, I'll do it my way. Because we've usually been taught that behaviour. I certainly was. And I've spoken to thousands of other people over decades that were, because yet again, Daniel, we don't know what we don't know. So, yeah, it's fascinating I think, to sort of peel the layers back of these labels and these beliefs. What's your thoughts, Daniel? I've made a statement already about all beliefs are false. What's your thoughts around that?
That's a belief in itself, isn't it? Beliefs are false.
Yeah. Can be.
There was a therapist that once said that, I can't think who it was now, and one person said they don't believe anything anymore, and they came back, well, that's a belief in itself, but I don't have any beliefs.
Yeah, I get that. And then I suppose now what we're flirting with is we're going into the realms of duality. So our thoughts, our beliefs are attached to our mind, but what if our mind and our body and what we think is us is actually part of the lower self? What if the higher self is that, to use your term, Daniel, and that is, is who we are. We are that diamond, absolutely, every single one of us. That diamond is the higher self, and actually that doesn't need any justification, reasoning. It doesn't need anything. It's just a beautiful thing. It just is. But the mind kicks in and wants to control through the ego with its thoughts, all this myriad, because as we know, the ego's there to protect us, to keep us safe, and it will do whatever it needs to do, plays tricks on us, tells us things, drives fear through us like a lightning bolt. But what if we can learn to detach from that and say, okay, Paul, so why are you thinking that? Almost watch yourself. It's almost like watching your little brother or a little child, little Daniel or little Paul do or say or be something that you think, wow, where did that come from? It's that detachment, isn't it?
Yeah. I certainly see the power of questioning your beliefs. I think, like you said, I think our mind is just trying to protect us, is trying to understand what's going on so that we can feel comfortable, so that we don't always feel unsure of what's going on. And beliefs don't always serve us. They work to protect us, but they don't always serve us. And sometimes it's worth taking a moment to question.
Yeah, I mean, a belief, I suppose, is it's based on an experience here and now, isn't it? Not literally here and now, but within a sort of time frame that we can relate to. But will we have the same belief tomorrow or the day after or the year after? It changes like the wind. So when you look at things, Daniel, that's ever changing, Rupert Spira, I think, does it brilliantly, and he eloquently describes how, if you imagine your life as a TV screen, and as you observe, you are the TV screen. We are the TV screen, because as we host events that go through our life, it could be a film, it could be a drama, we create that script, and we actually become so engrossed as part of that, we become that central character, and we're too immersed in being that central character. For me, it's called survival. I become a survival character, and that dominated that every role I played in whatever relationship. What I then found out, Daniel, is actually that detachment is these scenes come and go. There are happy times, there are sad times, there are times that are neutral. So what I learned was actually I'm not the cowboy in that film or the victim or the hero in that film. I'm actually the screen. And I house the experiences that come and go and come and go because I am the only thing that's constant. The experiences are not. The experiences are changing all the time. And so what Spira talks about is the mind, the body, and the world. And for the world, he talks about the five senses and the perceptions that go with that. I think I like the smell of coffee. Okay, well, that's your experience, but it's nothing more than an experience. So you take the learning out of it and you let the rest go. And in a more sort of elevated, higher self perspective, Daniel, it's around accepting that we're screens that just house life's experiences that come and go, and they come and go. But the one thing that remains constant is the TV screen. Or that beautiful diamond that will reflect light, because different lights will shine. At night time, light won't shine off the diamond. So does that stop it being a diamond? Of course it doesn't. But when the sun's radiating, like it is in the back on that window, which is absolutely brilliant, it doesn't stop it being a diamond, though, does it? You know, whether the light's there or not, it's a diamond. And does that?
Yeah, so we're experiencing our mind, basically. I think that's what I'm getting from this. So Michael Neal talks about this stuff a lot. There's like three principles, is very spiritual type practice. I'm only just recently coming across it. Michael Neal is like one of the big advocates of the three principles. And he says, he did acting before he became a coach. And he was in a play. And so they'd been practicing the play for a long time. And then when they came to actually doing the show, it was a play where he was in like a battle with his buddies. There was like some dancing play, and there was some argument that happened. And his buddy, who in the play was his enemy, at one point did something that he'd never done in practice before. And he said he just got so ticked off about it, you know. All of a sudden, he was this character. He wasn't Michael Neal anymore. He was this person in the character, and he got ticked off with what this other person did. And he said it's the same, you know, in life. We get ticked off with these things that happen, not really realizing that it's all just in our mind. You know, it's like one big play, isn't it? You know, it's just
Absolutely. Yeah, one big drama unfolding. And the trick is to go back to the early example, is to catch it. Be aware of it. Be aware of this stuff that's going on. What film's on my TV screen at the moment? I actually don't like that film. I need to switch that channel off. I don't like it because it doesn't serve me. And it's having that kind of higher self-elevation to look down on this character-driven, before you come immersed in it, which is actually a metaphor becoming a victim, and understand that actually our mind is a phenomenal tool. I say to people, is your little finger you? No, it's a part of me. Is your left knee you? No, it's a part of me. Your right foot, your left ear, your head, whatever. No, they're all parts of me. Does tail wag dog? Well, it shouldn't do. Isn't it true in our lives, though? And I'll certainly, throw my hands up and take responsibility for saying, for decades, Daniel, the tail wagged this dog before I took that power back and said, right, okay, no, you're the tail. You're part of the film that's on the screen. I am the screen. I am the dog. And it's the same with the mind. I understand my relationship now with my mind as my best friend. My best friend, but it's not me. It doesn't define who I am, no more than any past experiences that were controlled by my mind at the time because I didn't know any better. It's not defining me, and I won't allow it to. I've made some massive mistakes that's caused a lot of people a lot of pain. and I'm actually on a sending energy out, and if I can touch them physically, you know, to apologise for the part I played in that, whatever it may have been. So, any thoughts on any of that, Daniel, before I move on to one final question?
Yeah, what was coming up for me then when he was talking about that is, like I was saying earlier, our emotions are there to guide us. And the same with our thoughts, you know, our mind, it can give us great guidance. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not, but it's not us. It makes an amazing servant. It makes an amazing best friend, but it's not the captain of the ship. And you need to be present enough to be able to experience the emotions as they come up, and to be able to see the thoughts for what they are, and to sometimes take them as guidance, and to sometimes say, you know, well, this is not useful in this moment, and I'm going to do what I know is right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100% in my humble opinion, in my humble belief. Okay, I want to ask you one final question, Daniel, if I may. It's a question I've started asking all my guests that come on Speaking from Our Hearts, because I think it's a phenomenal question. And it's this: what does speaking from your heart mean to you?
It's about me being authentic. It's about me being connected to the source, me being present, me being open and vulnerable, allowing people to see the real me. Yeah, it's about being honest, open, authentic.
Okay. If you had one message, Daniel, to leave to the world, I mean, you've shared some great stuff, and sincere gratitude for you for, you know, showing vulnerability and talking around what I think they're becoming less taboo subjects, things like depression and anxiety. Thankfully, they're being brought out now in the open, and absolutely vital that they are. So thank you for that share. If you had one message, Daniel, above all others, to leave to the world from your present level of awareness, what would that be?
Be you, be authentic, allow people to see who you are, and no one is coming to save you. Your life is your responsibility.
Okay, thank you. So there you have it, listeners. Very thought-provoking, I feel. So, as I say, sincere gratitude to Daniel for sharing his story and his insights. And I just want to sign off, if I may, by saying this. Remember, whatever it is that you do, always walk your path with heart.